Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today. We haven't done mail in a while. We'll do a bunch of books, but we won't call it a book haul. We could. Any other YouTube channel would call it a book haul and call it a day. But now that haul wars seem to have erupted full scale on YouTube, especially on our little corner of BookTube, I'm going to reserve what I call book hauls for my main artillery, which is secondhand shopping. So this is not that. There's two kinds of book intake here, but neither one is secondhand shopping. Well, the first one is not shopping; it's free. I was surprised by content in a nearby little free library, so I got a couple of books. I got this Star of the Sea by Joseph O'Connor. This is from 2002 or 2003, something like that. 2002. It's the story of a boatload of Irish people fleeing the Irish potato famine and seeking a better life in the New World. And a lot of it takes place on board. The Star of the Sea is the name of the vessel. And there's also skullduggery on board. But I read this when it came out. And I thought it was meaty. I remember liking it, thinking that was a meaty historical novel. It didn't make me sing. It didn't make the short hair stand up. It didn't do anything like that. That I remember, it didn't. And then it went away. And Joseph O'Connor has had a big career since then. He's done a lot of books since then. Has a new one out from, I think, just late last year or early this year. But I saw this in the little free library, and I thought about this existential crisis that I've been having ever since the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston got hundreds and hundreds of this sort of thing. I mean, this came out to fanfare. Who is it here? The Daily Mail called it a masterpiece, and it's got other blurbs on it too. This is a UK edition, so I think this is a UK edition. So it's got only UK blurbs on it. Yeah, this is a UK edition, but it got lavish with praise in the United States as well, and is gone completely. No one studies the backlist of Joseph O'Connor. No one's ever going to read this in school. No one's ever going to bother to reprint his books. And recently, just in 2025, the Brattle Bookshop got a ton of this kind of thing. Truckloads of it. Which threw me into an existential crisis, wondering what the heck I'm doing with my life. As all raven-haired 28-year-olds occasionally wonder. What am I doing with my life? This stuff comes trundling down the pike, and the literati, the critical commentariat, the book chat world, responds in due kind. It comes trundling down the conveyor belt, and we respond to it. Interesting. What's this about? What kind of publicity display is this one getting? How much money is being lavished on this? How many other people are reviewing this? What is it, a bandwagon that I need to jump on? Is there any way that I, as an editor or freelance writer, can ignore it? All sorts of calculations like that put a book like this on the radar in the front tables of bookstores for a season, and then what? Then 20 years later, it's in one box among 200 for sale for the sale lot of the Brattle Bookshop, 10 feet away from the dumpster. Most of the books in that Brattle buy, I don't have any real agonizing thoughts about. I'd say 99% of them, I have no agonizing thoughts about at all. They were ephemera then, and I knew it. I said it to everybody. I called them that to all other critics who would listen. And now I have been proven right. They are ephemera. They're here today and literally gone tomorrow. Gone today now. It's the 1% that isn't that is sticking in my mind. This struck me as a serious novel. So I'm going to give it a reread. I'm risking only deepening my existential crisis, but nevertheless, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to give this a reread and see what I think about it in 2025. When this came out, I was horrified by a whole bunch of things that were in the news at the moment, including a U.S. president declaring war on an idea. As close as any U.S. president had ever come up until that point to saying the United States is now on a permanent wartime footing. I don't care who the enemy is. I need to justify this kind of spending to the Pentagon, or they'll shoot me in the head. So we're on a permanent wartime footing for the rest of our country's existence. Because, as I said and opined at the time, you can't declare war on terrorism. There's always going to be terrorism. That mean if you say that, that means that you are saying we are at war with an idea. And for a U.S. president to get into the well of Congress and say, if you're not with us, you're against us, is even worse. It seemed to me that I was seeing something horrifying and something, the lowest point in the country. In 2002, 2001, it never crossed my mind, nor did it cross the mind of anyone, even the most feverish conspiracy theorists, that there would come a day where the president of the United States would say, oh, I don't know, these terrorists seem okay to me. As long as they pay me, they seem okay to me. It's the freedom fighters I don't like. So the world has changed. I think it's safe to say that I have also changed. So I'm going to give this another try and see what I make of it in 2025. And the other book that I found in this little free library was a very different thing. It was this thing. Look at this. An illustrated encyclopedia of dinosaurs. And there is a triceratops with a little baby triceratops. And this is full of black and white photos. Of course, you'll get Richard Owen. You'll also get Othniel March and the Bone Wars and whatnot. It's the geographic column, and you will also get illustrations of dinosaurs all throughout their reign on Earth. Their millions and millions of years long reign on Earth. I wonder if this will give us a dramatic picture of the end. I wonder if it will do that. The tiny little shrew-like mammals that were the origin, the ancestors of all of us, was these tiny little things that lived in the shrubbery. They were too small for the notice of most of these monstrous animals, and they could burrow and hunt for grubs and get nourishment with underground water, with seepage, with dew, with whatnot, which meant that when the world was devastated by nuclear winter in the aftermath of a catastrophic asteroid strike, they could live where apex predators could not. So anyway, I don't think is anything special. I don't recall it. I don't mean to be mean. I don't think it's anything special. Illustrated histories of dinosaurs like this are common. But I've never read this one, and I'm up for them. I think, like anybody else, I think dinosaurs are fascinating. So I got those two, but in what we're not calling a book haul. I will save the designation of book haul for major artillery, now that the front has opened up all over. Even peaceful booktubers are now hauling left, right, and center. Aggression has broken out everywhere. But I'll save my secondhand shopping for that. So these are secondhand books, but they weren't shopping. They just fell into my lap. And now we'll do new books. We'll look at the mail for some new books, and we'll try to remember to talk about review handicapping, because some of you like that. How you would actually think about these things in terms of pitching them to an editor, including yours truly. And we'll also try to remember food for thought. Right? I stopped doing mail hauls a few times in the last 2 years because the books themselves were so at odds with reality, and were expecting me to be so, or their authors and their publishers will call my employers and say that I'm a racist or a bigot of some kind or other, that I would go into 40-minute rants about them and not upload the video. And as several of you have pointed out to me, that the way around that is food for thought. Simply look at the book, show it to you. That's good for the author anyway. Some of you might like it, even if I don't. And just say food for thought. So let's see what we have here first. This is late July. This is Stan and Gus by Henry Weinczek. Art, Ardor, and the Friendship That Built the Gilded Age. This is a dual biography and vivid portrait of the friendship between the famed architect and designer Stanford White and the sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens. I was wondering if the Gus was him. and the era in which they lived and worked. Both White and St. Gaudens were leaders in their respective fields, and the work of both men helped to define the aesthetics of the Gilded Age America, and is still very much with us today. Okay, one half of that sentence is right, one half of that sentence is wrong. They did define the Gilded Age. It's not with us at all today. Modern buildings today look like toasters. They look absolutely awful. As the author shows, while White and St. Gaudens may have had contrasting styles and personalities, St. Gaudens was melancholy and his work often inclined toward the spiritual, while White was a man of surfaces, obsessed with pleasure and beauty. The two forged a lasting bond, both as artistic collaborators and close friends. The author does an expert job of narrating White's and St. Gaudens' fascinating life stories while serving as a knowledgeable guide to many of the most lasting creations. From St. Gaudens' Adams Memorial in Washington, D.C., and his Robert Gould Shaw Memorial on Boston Common. Any of you who have ever come to Boston, I have troped you up the Common and shown you the Shaw Memorial. It is something. And the Adams Memorial, if the pub sheet is referring to the one I'm thinking of, even a picture of it is incredibly haunting, but actually seeing it in person is one of the most haunting experiences you'll ever have with a work of art. So that's wonderful. And I have read, St. Gaudens has had two major biographies, I think, in America. I've read them both and really liked them. So it's great to have another one. We were at the Robert Gould Shaw Memorial in Boston. It's at the top of Boston Common, facing the State House. It really is nice. To White's tower from Boston's Trinity Church and his arch in New York's Washington Square Park. And the author doesn't shy away from the dark sides and scandals of both men's lives, particularly White's, ending with his sensational murder at the old Madison Square Garden, which he and St. Gaudens collaborated on, by the jealous husband of Evelyn Nesbit. That murder was, I'm trying to remember the book, that murder was wonderfully, just vividly described. I think in A History of Madison Square Garden. Oh, I'm going to have to hunt that down. That's going to bother me. I'm going to need to know it for this review. I think it was A History of Madison Square Garden that had a great little passage describing that murder. The author is the author of several highly regarded previous books, including The Hairstons, An American Family in Black and White, which won the National Book Critics Circle Award, as well as excellent books about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. And this is his first new book since 2012. What have you been doing with yourself for 10 years? I'm naturally curious. Well, great. Fantastic. All right, so that's July 22nd. No need for fruits of thought. That looks fascinating. All right, let's move on here. Sorry for the subdued tone here. I'm feeling under the weather, so I still want to do a barrage of videos. It's utterly ridiculous. But I do want to do a barrage of videos, so I have been pacing myself between videos. It's not really working all that much, so don't get used to this number. But let's see what we have for this next one. Oh, is this a double? I think this is. This is by a whole bunch of people. L. David Met, who's a legend, Morgan Anderson, and H. Dean Clough. This is the Ellesmere Wolves, Behavior and Ecology in the High Arctic. Look at the baby pulling at the tails. Boop, boop, boop. This is from the University of Chicago Press. This comes out in today. This publication date is today. I might have an advanced copy of this, or maybe the e-copy. This is going to be a $32 paperback, so this is what you're going to get in the bookstore. For parts of 24 summers, L. David Meck has lived with wolves on Canada's Ellesmere Island, some 600 miles from the North Pole. Elsewhere, most wolves flee from even the scent of humans, but these animals, evolving relatively free from our persecution, are unafraid. By achieving the same intimacy with his wild host that others experience with domesticated dogs, he gained new insights into rarely studied behavior like pup feeding, pack hunting, food caching, howling, and scent marking. After his time at Ellesmere ended, his co-authors and fellow wolf researchers, Morgan Anderson and H. Dean Clough, continued this unique research, further illuminating the creature's movements and ecology. This book offers a compelling scientific overview of their findings and the first-hand accounts of adventure and survival in the Arctic. Terrific. And now this has blurbs, which is great. I'm wondering if there's a classic study along these lines. Of course, I know about these wolves. I don't need to read about them. And there was a classic study along these lines. I think this is destined to be a linchpin study of this particular body of animals. But there was one of Isle Royale's body of wolves, who I also knew a long, long time ago. And I wonder if that author is still alive. He'd be the perfect person to blurb this book. This has blurbs from Booklist and Kirkus Reviews. Okay, great. Rolf Peterson, the author of The Wolves of Isle Royale. He does blurb this. What does he have to say? Imagine white wolves living on Mars, chasing 10-pound Easter Bunny lookalikes that gather by the hundreds. Ellesmere Island provides a scene almost as unbelievable, and even a Mars-like rover driven by a biologist who could follow wolves and observe them largely without notice. Living with wolves in such a manner for more than 20 summer seasons, Meck and his colleagues here describe behavior that had rarely been seen before their groundbreaking adventure. Try it in the winter. Advancing our understanding of the adaptability and resilience of these fascinating carnivores living in one of the most remote and unusual landscapes on Earth. Okay, well, you natural history fans, and wolf fans especially, this is out today, and it's a $32 paperback. Just a study from people who were there on the ground, so you will get photographs, but also charts and raw data. Classic natural history. So we're on a roll here. We're not dealing with food for thought so far. Let's move on. Let's make sure that we run out of books before we run out of steam. That's what we want. We don't want to run out of steam. All right. Okay, great. This one is wrapped in plastic. Feels like metal when you can barely sit up. Let's get the plastic off there. This is great. Fantastic. This is also the great folks at the University of Chicago Press. So this is out already. This came out on March the 7th. This is by Paul Taylor, and it's called Fossils, An Essential Guide. This is going to be a $26 hardcover, but it's oversized, and it is full of pictures. So $26 is not bad for what you're getting here. Certainly we've seen books that we get in the mail here where you get a lot less for a lot more. So, ancient Earth seems like an alien world, but the fossil record can help reveal the mysteries of the organisms that have lived on our planet since its formation some 4,600 million years ago. In this engaging and beautifully illustrated book, world-renowned paleontologist Paul Taylor provides a comprehensive guide to all aspects of fossils to tell the story of life on Earth. He begins with the basics: how fossils form, how they mark geological time, and what they tell us about the origin of life and major evolutionary events like the Cambrian explosion. He then shows the oldest fossils, single-cell bacteria, in amazing 3 billion-year-old microbial rock structures before introducing the first animals in the fossil record. From fishes to amphibians, reptiles, and mammals, we meet these animal fossils in an appropriately evolutionary parade. Next, we imagine plants long past, charting the evolution of this kingdom and learning how ephemeral botanical remains can become permanent records. While comprehensive in his coverage of fossil groups and ages, Taylor pays particular attention to specimen fossil hunters are most likely to encounter, like crinoids and iconic ammonites. Throughout, he introduces us to fascinating fossil folklore, like the idea that ammonites are the petrified remains of coiled snakes. I have an ammonite over on the shelf there, and helps us distinguish true fossils from fakes. And it's fascinating, and that I hope that he spends a good deal of time on those microbial fossils. Of course, they won't be on a cover like this, not really, unless that top one is. But take a minute to think what that is. Single-celled organisms, microbial fossils, where it's not just a tiny, almost imperceptible pinprick in a rock, but actually a fossil. And that is important because it illustrates the fact that for A billion years? More than that? For a billion years, when Earth had life, it was just single-celled life. It was scum. Less than scum. If you had come to visit this planet in a full Star Trek exosuit, it would have taken serious scientific investigation for you to determine that there was single-celled organisms here. You certainly wouldn't see any life. You'd need equipment to detect it, and that was a billion years. A billion years is a long time. That was a billion years where life was merely learning to replicate and very slowly, very incrementally complexifying. And that's in the fossil record. So great. We are doing fine for books here. Absolutely fine. Got a couple of March releases that need to go on the review docket. But let's try some more here. Let's see if we can get through this whole thing without any food for thought. I mean, we have actual food for thought, but you know what I mean. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see what this next one is. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. But isn't this late getting to me? I thought this was late as well. Let's see. No, not in this country. Maybe in the UK. This comes out in early May. This is Peter Conrad, who's wonderful. We'll read all about him. This is Dickens the Enchanter, inside the explosive imagination of the great storyteller. See Dickens as never before in this creative biography, which delves into his novels, journalistic essays, and letters to reveal his strange, hilarious, but obsessive personality and the audacity of a mind that set out, as he said, to rearrange the universe. This is going to be a $30 hardcover in early May. Peter Conrad's bold rediscovery of Dickens suggests that he alone rivals Shakespeare, in some ways betters him. I have never seen it. I have tried with this author so many times, and I have never seen it. Maybe this book will do it. I always hope that something will. As well as re-examining the great novels, Conrad's book probes the journalism in which Dickens reports on his risky ventures into the urban underworld. It also describes the celebrated but dangerously over-intense public readings in which, as at a seance, he allowed his most terrifying characters to take possession of him. Ultimately, it reveals how forces of creation and destruction come together in Dickens, who, despite his reputation for jollity and effusive sentiment, found it increasingly hard to control the madness and violence of his own self-destructive genius. Okay, well, I am almost certainly, the thing is, the irony here is that I'm almost certainly going to enjoy this book. I'm almost certainly going to enjoy it. And it will almost certainly go on the shelf that I have. There's now, what? I'm looking at, I see 10 books. That's probably more that are not altogether there. About Dickens. Books about Dickens, but not Dickens himself. I love reading about the guy. I think he's fascinating. But we'll see. We'll see what Peter Conrad can do. You Dickens fans out there, I know that there are some. You're going to want to know about this thing. Get on to your library. This comes out in early May. It's going to probably be written about everywhere. Probably everywhere. This is, I think, the only major Dickens entry in the U.S. market until the autumn, which is large. Some of the autumn is obscure still, so I don't know what's coming out then. But I don't think there's anything else. And book review editors love to call up so-and-so or somebody to talk about Dickens at length. So this could get reviewed. So get it from your library or even, pre-order it. The author would, I'm sure, approve of that. Let's see what this next one is. In what is not, remember, a book haul. I can deal with obstreperous little pea shooters in the hall wars without including mail in that. I will bury them. I will pound the podium with my shoe. I will bury them. But I don't have to do it here. Okay, so this next one is coming out in late June. It is a novel. Yes? Odd not to have you just blaring that on the title, but yeah, I think this is a novel. This is The Place of Tides by James Rebanks. And it has a blurb on the cover from George Saunders. A modern classic, one we very much need right now. Always dangerous to call something a classic. Let's see what this is. James Rebanks has firmly established himself as one of the most revered voices in contemporary nature writing. Oh, so maybe it's not a novel. His previous books, the internationally best-selling The Shepherd's Life and Pastoral Song, offered readers profound meditations on rural life, tradition, and an evolving relationship with the land, works that resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. In this new book, he crafts an exquisite travel memoir that is deeply personal reflection on life, nature, and human connection. So this is nonfiction, coming out in June. The author ventures beyond his familiar landscapes of England's Lake District to the rugged Vega archipelago of Norway. Here he spends a season on a remote island with a remarkable woman who, for over 50 years, is one of the last practitioners of a centuries-old tradition, caring for the wild eider ducks as they nest and harvesting their precious down. This year, however, marks her final season. How interesting. He spends time with her, with this woman, plucking ducks. Look at that. I wonder if that's where he is. The author's gift has always been his ability to capture the quiet profundity of the nature world. His prose is lyrical yet precise, rich with atmospheric detail that immerses the reader in the stark beauty of Norway's coastal wilderness. His time there becomes a prism through which he examines his own life, making a journey not just of geography, but introspection. That's usually the Achilles heel of books like this. The author, especially one who's had acclaim for doing it before, will overestimate how interesting they are to the normal reader. But for all I know, he is interesting, so who knows? Okay, great, fantastic. So this comes out in late June, so high summer, right at the turn of July. But again, this gives you time. Here, let's put that. Let's put that where I can see it. June seems like a long way away. Again, you now, one of the nice things about these mail hauls is that you have a little advance warning to get your library to order this thing if it sounds interesting to you or to people that you know, maybe a book club, and also to pre-order it. If you're sure that it's something that you want, you can just pre-order it. Publishers love to see that. It helps them to gauge interest in a book. All that is possible now that you know these things are coming. But let's wrap up. Okay, let's wrap up things here. Let's do just one more here. What have we got here? Boy, I never know what I'm going to get in this job. I never do. And I love it. I love it. So don't get me wrong here. All right, this next one is also June. Let's see here. This is by Michael Koreski, and it is called Sick and Dirty: Hollywood's Gay Golden Age and the Making of Modern Queerness. And you can, even if you're not a big fan of movies, you can recognize Shirley MacLaine there, so I bet you can guess what movie this is. A rare background siren. Made worse because people aren't getting out of the way. Wow. Okay. All right, let's see here. Naturally, I feel a little leery here. I don't want us to hit a food for thought book. We're doing so fine that I don't want us to hit one. But modern queerness is a vicious term. It's not descriptive at all. It's an angry, vicious, partisan term. It is meant to say you're either a good person or a bad person. Now, I don't know if that's how it's being used in this subtitle. But that is how it's used in common parlance now. It's not just a question of people being gay or lesbian. Modern queerness has become one of those attack words where if you're a normal person, an abnormal person can call you a bigot on social media. If you're not in line with the latest thinking on it, the various attack words, I'm sure you know the attack words as well as I do. It's so tiring to have to deal with them every year when you're not a bigot. There's nothing wrong with you at all. Anyway, let's not pick a fight with it before we even know what it is. From the 1930s to the 1960s, the Motion Picture Production Code severely restricted what Hollywood cinema could depict. This included any inference of the lives of homosexuals. Gay activist Vito Russo famously condemned Hollywood's censorship regime, lambasting many mid-century films as the bigoted products of his titular celluloid closet. Yes, and you read that book, Celluloid Closet? Koreski, the author here, re-examines these scorned films to tell the story of how filmmakers, straight and queer, in the closet and out in the open, smuggled queer themes and ideas into their work, incrementally paving the way for recognition and representation. There's more to the movies during this period of popular filmmaking than meets the eye. The Golden Age set in motion many of the ways we still talk about queerness in the 21st century. In this insightful, wildly entertaining book, all right, wildly entertaining feels like a life preserver, thank God. Thank God. Here's hoping that I am not yelled at and lectured throughout this book. Here's hoping that I'm not. Modern queerness just sets my hair on end, as I'm sure it does yours. Not just modern queerness, but a whole bunch of other attack words. Where, okay, do I have to have a Soviet-style struggle session of admitting that I'm the worst person in the world and my grandparents are horrible people before I can read your book? Do I have to agree with you in your contempt for me before I read your book? Anyway, let's move on here. Cinema historian Michael Koreski finds new meaning in, quote, problematic classics of the Code era, like Hitchcock's Rope, Minnelli's Tea and Sympathy, and, bookending the period and anchoring his narrative, William Wyler's two adaptations of Children's Hour, Lillian Hellman's provocative hit play about a pair of school teachers accused of lesbianism. Lifting up the underappreciated queer filmmakers, writers, and actors of the era, the author finds artists who are long overdue for reevaluation. Sounds very interesting. That sounds very interesting. Through his brilliant analysis, this book reveals the bad seeds of queer cinema to be surprisingly, even gleefully subversive. Oh, you are winning me over. Whoever wrote this pub sheet, you are winning me over. Reminding us, in an age of book bans and gag laws, that nothing makes queerness speak louder than its opponent's bid to silence it. Okay, all right, I wasn't sure, but I am absolutely sold. So who is Michael Koreski when he's at home? Editorial director of New York's Museum of the Moving Image. And previously he has held editorial roles at Film at Lincoln Center, Metrograph Cinema, and the Criterion Collection, where he continues to curate and host the Criterion Channel series Queer Sighted. He has taught at NYU and the New School, and his writing has appeared in Film Comment, Sight and Sound, The Village Voice, Film Quarterly, and many other publications. Okay, great. So what is this on the back there? Long list of things on the back here. Oh. Okay. I thought at first that this long list on the back was going to be the author's appearances, maybe, to do press for this book, which is very rare to see, even years and years after COVID. And we're still a good, I would say, a solid year before bird flu. So authors can go out and do press. But it's rare to see an actual list of appearances. But this is not a list of appearances. This is much worse. This is a list of errata. Just don't see that very often. Okay, so this list, if it were a list of appearances, that would be of interest to. I don't even know. I actually don't know why review copies ever did have lists of author publicity appearances. What possible use could that be to a book critic? But at least it had a public interest. It was never in the public book, but it had a public interest. But a list of errata is only for the reviewer. That some sections were done wrong in this edition, so that's interesting. That's very interesting. And I need to keep this sheet. You notice I've been putting some of the sheets aside because they're totally redundant. But I need to keep this sheet because I need that list of erotica when I review this. I don't want to quote it wrong. So that comes out in early June, and sounds fascinating. I think we can agree that pub sheet pulled it out and pulled things around. That pub sheet made this sound fascinating. Good. great. I have always wanted, I mean, I've always wanted a corrective to the celluloid closet, to its spit-flecked hysteria, and I've had those correctives over the years. Lots of film buffs that I knew were saying this about that book right from its publication. But if you don't think that a lot of these people knew exactly what they were doing, then you're not paying enough attention to these movies. So this could be really, really good. I'm sure that it will send me back to watching a lot of these movies. But anyway, there we go. That is a mail haul, and we got through it all without any food for thought. So let's do a Steve Pyramid before we wrap this up. This is an illustrated encyclopedia of dinosaurs. No idea how good it will be. Sick and Dirty. This is, let's just call it queer cinema during the age of coded presentations. We have The Place of Tides, natural history and nonfiction. We have Dickens the Enchanter. Peter Conrad is wonderful. I'm going to give him another chance to sell Dickens to me. We have a book on fossils, The Essential Guide to Fossils, by an expert on the field, full of illustrations for $30. Not exorbitant. We have a paperback of the Ellesmere Wolves. Straight up made to be cited natural history. So this is not the wonder of wolves with all sorts of folklore and whatnot. This is an actual study of this population of wolves. And Stan and Gus, a dual biography of Stanford White and Augustus St. Gaudens. Fantastic. Oh, and also Star of the Sea by Joseph O'Connor, which is going to feed my ongoing existential crisis, but not right away. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.